So, you might be wondering about these glasses. Yes, they are sunglasses without the actual glass in them. Rikki, why the hell do you look like this? I just wanted to. So let's talk about VidCon, because VidCon has been over for a week, somewhat, like about a week, which is very, very sad, and I miss it, as I always do. There is no VidCon vlog or any of that, but I wanted to sit down and talk about how accessible VidCon was compared to last year and 2015. Really, I'm going to be covering food and deaf accessibility type of things. If you want to know about stuff like wheelchair access or service dogs, you would probably be better off asking people like Annie Laney or Molly Burke, because they know more about that, whereas I am the deaf one, so, and I eat, so yeah. So you might not know this, but last year, Allie and I were hired to be disability advisors by Travis, who worked at VidCon. And this happened after a proper cart system and interpreters failed to show up to the first disabilities panel last year. So we were hired to help them make it more accessible the next year and to make sure that everything was smooth sailing during the event. To be quite frank, we weren't really utilized this year. There was one email conversation after VidCon, and then there was an email sent about food, which I will talk about soon. But other than that, we weren't really used, which I thought was a little bit strange because we are the disabled people, so we probably could have been used a little bit more. Actually, for the video portion, we're just going to talk about deaf accessibility, but I do have a written post on deafpoynters.com about how accessible VidCon was, and part of that talks about food. Food is actually the first thing that I talk about. So in the description box, I will leave a link to the article which you can read. So I'm very happy to say that this year a proper cart system and interpreters showed up to both disability panels and the accessibility panel, which was absolutely fantastic. You had 2 or 3 screens on the floor, one that was just showing the VidCon logo, one that was the captions facing my way so I could read them, and then another screen that was facing the audience. And those that were sitting in the reserved disabled seating, the ones with deaf, they could look at the screen and read the captions if they had no use for the ASL interpreter that was sitting beside of the screen. Perfect. To go along with that, this year VidCon sent emails to attendees asking or saying that if you needed to request an ASL interpreter for any panels that you wanted to go view, you could do so. I do not know if everyone who requested an interpreter got what they requested. If you attended VidCon and you're watching this and you're deaf and you use interpreters and you didn't get them, please leave a comment. But as far as I know, my pal Mia, she was able to get interpreters for everything that she requested, so fantastic. I thought that was a really neat idea because even though you have about 15 interpreters on call, it's just easier to request something ahead of time and have them show up. It's perfect. Or the idea is perfect. If everybody showed up, then yes. Fantastic. Also, regarding interpreters, I don't know if they showed up at the main stages this year. Last year I went to go view the Women Online or Women on YouTube panel that was at the main Kia main stage, whatever it's called, and there were interpreters already there. They told me that interpreters were going to be at all those main stages. I don't know if they were there this year because I didn't go to that stage, so if anybody did go to those stages to view a panel and saw interpreters or did not see interpreters, please let me know. Now, there were about 3 things that I could think of or that I was told that was a little strange to me. Right after the first Disabilities on YouTube panel, there was a disabilities discussion, and Zach Anner, who is a YouTuber, was on that panel. Now, he uses a wheelchair to get around, and he was going to use that wheelchair, be in that wheelchair when he was going to go up on stage. So because this is on the community track, it's a little more complicated to get up on the stage. You have to go backstage and then you have to go upstairs to get up there. That can't use the stairs as an able-bodied person would, so we needed a lift operator to get him up there. But nobody could find a lift operator at first, which was a little nerve-wracking. But eventually we did find a lift operator, but I was just kind of like, why do we not have one now? Like, what are we supposed to do? Lift him and his wheelchair up onto the stage to get him up there? Now, if you watch Andrea's VidCon vlog, which will be in a card somewhere up here, she did talk about how security was not the best at dealing with disabled people. Andrea has spina bifida, and yes, she is more than allowed to go into the reserved disabled seating. She went to go sit down, and a security guard came up to her and said, this seat is for disabled people only. She said, yes, I know I'm disabled. And the security guard goes up to her, or looks at her and says, no, you're not. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to VidCon and Anaheim Convention Center, they're two completely different things. So while VidCon staff may be informed about one thing, Anaheim Convention Center may not, and I'm not even sure if the security company is related to the Anaheim Convention Center or if it's just like a separate thing entirely. So you might be dealing with 3 separate companies, and it's a lot of work to get them all on the same page. It shouldn't be, but it is. So I agree that one of the things that needs to be looked at and needs to be fixed is that all 3 companies need to be on board and educated about disabilities and people with disabilities, especially when it comes to invisible disabilities. So that's a thing that needs to be worked on. So that's a thing that needs to be worked on. Shocking. Yeah. Somebody told me there was something going on regarding service dogs, but I'm not exactly sure what that is. Might have to ask Molly Burke and see if she had any issues. Mia had issues, but I don't know exactly what the details are. One thing that kind of disappointed me was the lack of captions on movie night or movie night. I'm not really sure that isn't exactly something that I really paid attention to. I know they were doing a screening for the Power Rangers movie, and then beyond that, I'm not really sure. But Mia told me that there were no captions, and I think this was just disappointing for me because the VidCon staff knows me as somebody who really advocates for captioning, and that was a really big thing that Allie and I talked about when we were emailing them. And when Mia went up to the VidCon staff and security, I think she went up to both, and asked why there were no captions, they said, oh, it's way too hard to put on captions. It's impossible to put captions on there. Just get the interpreters to interpret the entire movie for you, which is, that's not what interpreters interpret. So that was a little bit of a bummer, and it would have been nice to see or know that they had open captions on the movie as well. I know a lot of hearing folks hate open captions, though. Every time there's talk about open captions, there's at least one that pops up and say, I don't want to watch this, why do I have to read the movie? I don't want to read the movie, but I think it's at least worth looking into for next year. Overall, I would say that at least for me, from what I've seen personally, there's been a major improvement in some areas, such as all the accommodation, most of it, all the deaf accommodation showed up to the panels that they were supposed to be on, at least regarding disabilities discussion, disabilities panel, and accessibility panel. Stuff with security needs to be worked on. And yeah, and as far as food goes, to summarize what I wrote in the article real quick, things still need to be labeled properly. It was labeled properly in the lounges that I've seen or that I visited at the hotel that featured creator stayed at. But as far as the lounges at the convention itself, cards were still placed, and it can be easily moved. And if you have someone, true story, who is allergic to soy and they drink soy milk by accident because somebody moved the cards around, then that's not a good time for anybody attending VidCon, whether they are just viewing the panel or whether they are actually on the panel. So yeah, if you have any comments about the accessibility or even lack thereof, the improvements or the lack thereof, please leave them in the comments so that in the future Allie and I can bring this up with the VidCon staff. And yeah, if you want to follow me on all my social media, links to that will be down below. If you want to help support my content, you can do so by being a monthly patron on Patreon, or you can leave tips on Ko-fi. Both links will be down below. I upload every Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays, and I will see you later. Bye!